After Solomon's death, the kingdom split in two, and the new king in the north lived in constant fear of losing his throne to the temple in Jerusalem. Jeroboam worried that if his people kept traveling south to worship, their loyalty would eventually follow their faith back to the rival throne. So he melted down gold into two calves, one for Bethel and one for Dan, and told his people these idols were the gods who had freed them from Egypt. He built a brand new altar at Bethel, appointed priests who had no right to the priesthood, and invented a religious festival on a date of his own choosing. On the chosen day, Jeroboam himself climbed the altar in royal robes, ready to burn incense in front of the entire assembled nation. No one in that crowd suspected that a stranger from the rival kingdom was about to interrupt the ceremony with a single sentence placed in his mouth by God. A man of God, whose name Scripture never records, crossed the border from Judah, carrying an order that left no room for questions or rest. He walked alone, without an escort or supplies, certain that his mission would end the moment he spoke the words he carried inside him. He arrived at Bethel just as the king raised his hands over the smoking altar, surrounded by false priests and a nation that had traded its faith for convenience. The man of God raised his voice against the altar itself, not against the king, and announced something no one present could verify or fully understand yet. He said that one day, generations later, a king named Josiah would be born, and that king would burn the bones of these very priests on this same altar. The name Josiah left his mouth 300 years before that king was born, a detail neither the priests of Bethel nor Jeroboam could explain as mere invention. To prove his words were true, the man of God added an immediate sign. The altar would split apart that very instant, and its ashes would spill onto the ground. Furious at hearing a prophecy against his own creation, Jeroboam stretched out his arm from the altar and ordered his guards to seize the stranger. In the exact moment the king pointed his hand, that same hand withered completely, frozen stiff, impossible for him to move. At the same time, exactly as the man of God had announced, the altar cracked in two, and the ashes of the offering spilled out before everyone's eyes. The crowd gathered at Bethel watched their king's hand go completely useless, while the sacred stone of their brand new religion broke apart on its own. Terrified and humiliated in front of his own court, Jeroboam changed his tone completely and begged the man of God to pray for his hand to be restored. The man of God prayed for the very king who, seconds earlier, had ordered his arrest, and Jeroboam's hand moved again as if it had never withered at all. Grateful and still shaken, the king invited the stranger to his palace, offering food, rest, and a gift before he set out on his way back home. The man of God refused the invitation without hesitation, explaining that he carried an order too precise to leave room for royal courtesy. God had commanded him not to eat bread, not to drink water, and not to return by the same road he had taken into Bethel, under any circumstance. Not even half a kingdom offered as a reward would have been enough to make him break that instruction, and he left by a different road than the one he came in on. What no one in the palace knew was that, in that very city, an old man who also called himself a prophet lived quietly, soon to become the turning point of the entire story. That old man's sons had witnessed everything at the altar, the withered hand, the broken stone, the prophecy about a king who did not yet exist. They ran home and told their father every detail of what the stranger from Judah had said and done in front of King Jeroboam himself. The old prophet listened with growing interest, something stirring inside him, a mixture of curiosity, urgency, and perhaps a little wounded pride. He ordered his donkey saddled immediately, without fully explaining his intentions, and rushed out after the man who was already leaving the city. He caught up with him resting under an oak tree, cooling off from the heat of the road, still unaware that this meeting would eventually cost him his life. The old man asked directly if he was the man of God who had come from Judah, And the stranger answered yes, suspecting nothing. The old prophet then invited him to his own house to eat bread and drink water, as a gesture of hospitality toward a servant of the Lord. The man of God repeated, almost word for word, the same order he had already given the king. He could not eat, drink, or return by the same road. That was when the old man spoke the lie that would seal both their fates, a lie wrapped in the most sacred name he could invoke. He claimed to be a prophet too, and said an angel had spoken to him by the Lord's command, telling him to bring the man of God back to eat and drink in his house. Scripture states plainly and without excuse that this claim was false, that no angel had spoken, and that the old man lied deliberately to the man of God. And yet the man of God, who hours earlier had resisted an entire king's court and its rewards, gave in to the words of a total stranger. He returned with the old man to Bethel, walked into his house, and sat down to eat bread and drink water, exactly what God had forbidden him to do. The text never explains why the same man who would not yield to a king yielded so easily to an old stranger with no visible authority at all. While they ate together, something shifted suddenly in the room, and the word of the Lord came down for real, this time upon the old man who had just lied. The old prophet, now speaking with genuine authority instead of invented words, turned to the man of God and delivered a sentence that left him frozen. He announced that because the man had disobeyed the Lord's precise command and eaten where he had been forbidden to eat, his body would never reach the tomb of his fathers. The man of God finished his meal in silence, offering no defense, asking no question about why the same God who sent him now allowed his condemnation. The old man, perhaps regretting what he had done, prepared his own donkey for the journey home, as if one small kindness could undo the damage already caused. The man of God mounted and set off down the road, unaware that every step carried him closer to the exact fulfillment of the sentence he had just heard. Somewhere along that road, with no witness to see it happen, a lion stepped out and met him in the middle of the empty path. The lion killed him right there, knocking him from the donkey, and the body of the man of God was left lying on the dusty ground. But what happened next is the part of this story that no scholar has ever managed to fully explain, even to this day. The lion did not devour the body, did not drag it away, did not hide it in the brush, the way predators normally treat their prey. It did not attack the donkey either, which stood quietly beside the corpse, unmoving, as if some invisible force kept both animals perfectly calm. The lion simply stood beside the body and beside the donkey, motionless, in a scene that defied every instinct known to the travelers on that road. Some passers-by came upon the scene and stopped in their tracks, unable to make sense of what they were seeing. They saw a man's body lying on the ground, a donkey standing quietly beside it, and a lion also standing there, not devouring, not fighting, not moving at all. None of the three figures in that scene behaved the way anyone would expect. Not the dead man, not the pack animal, not the predator. The witnesses carried on toward the city of Bethel, telling everyone who would listen exactly what they had seen on the road. The news eventually reached the old prophet, the very man who had lied, and then, hours later, spoken the true sentence against the man of God. The moment he heard the description, the old man understood immediately that the body could only belong to the man he himself had led into disobedience. He announced in front of his sons that it had to be the man of God who had disobeyed the word of the Lord, and that this was why the lion had killed him. He ordered his donkey saddled once more, this time not to deceive anyone, but to go retrieve the body of the man he had unintentionally condemned. He left the city and found exactly the scene he had been told about. The body on the ground, the donkey still, the lion still standing beside both of them. The lion, which had not touched the body or attacked the donkey the entire time, did not attack the old man either when he approached. The old prophet lifted the body of the man of God, laid it across his own donkey, and made his way back to the city in silence. Once in Bethel, he wept openly over the corpse, speaking words that sound almost like grief for a brother rather than for a stranger he had just met. He buried him in his own family tomb, an honor usually reserved only for a household's closest members, not for a foreigner from a rival kingdom. That gesture feels especially strange once you remember it was this same old man whose lie had directly caused the death he was now mourning so deeply. He then gathered his own sons and gave them an instruction that would only make sense generations later, long after they themselves were gone. He told them that when he died, they should bury him in that same tomb, right beside the bones of the man who had prophesied against the altar at Bethel. He explained his reasoning with a certainty that seems strange given his own role in the tragedy. The words spoken against that altar would come true without fail. So two men who had known each other for only a single day, one obedient and punished, the other dishonest yet moved to remorse, ended up sharing the same grave forever. The altar at Bethel remained standing for generations, used by king after king, while the warning spoken there that day slowly faded from memory. Exactly 300 years passed since the man of God had spoken the name of a king who did not yet exist in any human record. In that time, a king named Josiah was born in Judah, carrying the exact name the prophecy had announced 3 centuries earlier at that altar. Josiah launched a sweeping religious reform across his kingdom, tearing down idols, false altars, and shrines that had been raised against the will of God. When his soldiers reached Bethel, they found the very altar Jeroboam had built generations before, still standing, still used by false priests. Josiah ordered the altar destroyed, and the bones of its idolatrous priests burned on its ruins, fulfilling the old prophecy almost word for word. As his men dug up nearby tombs to burn more bones on the desecrated altar, someone pointed out one grave marked differently from all the rest. Josiah asked whose tomb it was, and the local people told him it belonged to the man of God who had foretold exactly what was happening now. They also told him that resting in that same tomb was the old prophet who, generations earlier, had asked to be buried beside him. Hearing that this tomb held the man whose prophecy was being fulfilled right in front of his eyes, Josiah gave a different order for that one grave. He commanded that no one touch those bones, that the tomb remain untouched, even as everything around it was being destroyed and burned without exception. And so, the only tomb spared amid the total destruction of Bethel belonged to a man who died for disobeying, buried beside the very man who deceived him. Scripture never explains why God allowed a disobedience caused by someone else's lie to end in a death so violent and seemingly disproportionate. It never explains why a lion, an animal that normally devours its prey without hesitation, stood quietly instead, touching neither the body nor the donkey. Some scholars have pointed out that the lion's behavior seems deliberately unnatural, as if its purpose that day was not to hunt, but simply to mark a place and a truth. Others wonder why the old prophet, the direct cause of the deception, ended up being the one who wept most sincerely over the man he had ruined. No one in the biblical text openly condemns the old man for his lie, even though the consequences of that lie proved fatal for someone else entirely. The story leaves an uncomfortable question hanging in the air. If God already knew about the deception, why did his own messenger alone pay the full price for the mistake? The man of God had resisted the temptation of power offered by a grateful king with an entire kingdom laid at his feet as reward. Yet he fell to the smallest temptation imaginable, the seemingly harmless hospitality of an unknown old man claiming to speak in God's name. That contrast between resisting something enormous and giving in to something small may be the most unsettling part of this entire story for anyone listening today. The shared tomb at Bethel became, without anyone planning it, the only monument left standing after 3 centuries of kings and idols came and went. Everything Jeroboam built with gold, invented priests, and a festival of his own design was eventually reduced to ashes under a king who did not even exist when his name was first spoken. All that remained standing was the tomb of 2 men, bound together by a lie, a death, and a remorse that Scripture records without ever fully judging either of them. Jeroboam's withered hand, healed within seconds, became little more than a footnote next to the far darker fate awaiting the very man who healed it. The man of God's name is never mentioned anywhere in the account, unusual for a book that typically names even far less significant characters. The old man who lied is also never given a name in the text, as if both men had been reduced deliberately to their roles, the obedient one and the deceiver. Perhaps that missing detail is the quiet key to the whole story, a reminder that anyone can end up playing either role without ever realizing it. The lion that did not eat, the donkey that did not flee, and the tomb that survived 3 centuries of destruction remain to this day a mystery no one has fully solved. No commentator, ancient or modern, has ever managed to explain with certainty why God chose such a strange sign to seal the fate of his own disobedient messenger. The story does not end with a tidy moral lesson, but with a shared grave, an altar reduced to dust, and a question that stays open generation after generation. Because if a man who resisted a king could still fall for the lie of an ordinary old stranger, Scripture seems to ask, without ever saying it outright, which of us would truly be safe?